Hi, in this video, I want to show you how coding agents work. So agents like Claude Code, Cursor, Codex, I will explain everything you need to know about what happens inside when you do a request. So we'll talk about LLMs, we'll talk about how they use tools to interact with files and to do other stuff, how subagents work, and basically you will understand everything and you will not have any false beliefs about coding agents. Some people think that coding agents, they index the whole code base or every time they read the whole code base. So you will understand in practice how it works and why this is not true, what is true. So let's begin. Under the hood of every coding agent is an LLM. LLM is, let's think about it as some black box that was trained on a lot of code bases and a lot of text from the internet, basically usually on the whole internet, that can predict the next token, or you can think about next word. Token is 3-4 characters, it depends really, but you can think that LLMs, they just predict next word. If you have a sentence, the weather is, like then you have an LLM, and this LLM, it has the whole previous text as input, and then it tries to predict the next word. It tries to assign probabilities to all possible words known in English or any other language. And here, for example, it can say great or bad, and it assigns probabilities. So for example, great with probability 0.5, bad with probability 0.3, and so on. And some other words, like non-relevant words, they will have very, very low probability, like close to zero or equal to zero. Now, probably you've used ChatGPT or Claude as chatbots, and the main difference between standard LLM and chatbot is the chat structure. So in chatbot, the whole conversation is split into user messages and what's called assistant messages or AI messages or LLM messages. Under the hood, they're still the same LLM, but it was fine-tuned and trained using sequences of messages, which made it to generate text and stop at the end of the message. So it was designed in that way, but it is still the same LLM. And so we have alternation of user messages. So it's when you type in ChatGPT, how do I do this and that? We have assistant. Then we have, again, user message and so on. So user message is your follow-up message and assistant message will be reply to those follow-up. So now what is hidden from you by developer of a chatbot is called system prompt. So the system prompt is kind of an instruction that is usually implemented by developer of a chatbot or of an agent. And if you saw some collections of prompts, like a couple of years ago, best prompts for developers, best prompts for HR, and they usually start with you are a software developer or you are senior human resources, whatever. So these prompts are usually go into system prompt, and system prompt is an important instructor, and LLMs are trained to listen to these instructions. And they listen to these instructions more than they listen to user messages. This is not guaranteed, but at least they've trained LLMs in that way. So for example, in system messages, you can have instructions like the code should be secure, don't generate any code that can be used as code to steal some data. And if user asks to generate this code, with an LLM with high probability will reject to generate this code. Again, this is not guaranteed. And there are different ways how people try to, trick LLM to do something that is prohibited by system prompt. But still, system prompt is an important structure. It is there, and it is used in order to design the behavior, not just security practice, but how the model should behave, what should it do, how it should do it, etc. Now, if you open any coding agents like Claude Code, you will notice that Claude Code is chatbot as well. So you can write some messages, it will generate some response, and then you will write follow-up messages, fix this, fix that, it will write response back. So it has the same structure of user and assistant messages. There is also a system prompt, which is very big and which is not exposed by default by developers of Claude, by Anthropic. Now here you might ask, so what is the difference between coding agent and the chatbot like Claude on website or ChatGPT on the website? The main difference is the tools that are available to this agent or to this chatbot. So what is a tool? When you usually use ChatGPT, it generates you some text response. And it means that assistant messages has type text. But there is another type which is called tool call. Tool call means like a function call. It is basically LLM wants its wrapper, its harness, it's called harness, to do something, to call some function in written function in some programming language. Simple example that is in many tutorials about tool calls is weather. So LLMs, it can't know the current weather because it's just the model that predicts the next word, but it can generate a tool call. Let's consider a very simple example. We have user messages and user says, what is the weather, right? So it's their question. Now assistant, so LLM, it generates not text, but it generates tool call. So it says tool called get weather, and parameter of this tool call is a city, for example, London. Then developer of this chatbot, of wrapper, of the harness of this chatbot should actually do the execution of this function. I don't know, call some API, look on some database, whatever, and then return the result. And the result will go to user message. So user message will be, it's hidden from you. It's not you as a human user writing this message, but this tool result will be treated by model as user message. So it will treat it like it asked user to call this tool and user called this tool and returned back the result. And here you might ask, how is this related to coding agents? So in coding agents, every interaction happens with files and with outer world happens using tools. For example, if you want LLM to read a file, how it reads a file, there is a tool called read file. If you want to change the file, edit some file, there is a tool edit file. Let's go to Claude and ask what tools are available to you. So I'm asking what tools are available to you, system only, because I have some additional tools like from MCPs, but it's not for today's video. And we see read, write, edit. So these tools, they're used in order to interact with files. There's bash tool. So if you use coding agents, you probably saw that agent can execute bash commands. So this bash tool is actually very powerful because in bash, agents can do a lot of things. For example, they can search for files. They can filter files by something that is inside files. And there are literally hundreds of different commands in any bash that are available to models. And models usually are good at them. So this bash tool is heavily used for anything you ask it to do. There are some more like advanced tools, for example, agent, subagents. So again, when you want your coding agent to spin up some subagent, how it works is that it calls this tool agent. The input for this tool is a prompt, and agent will do something that is written in that prompt in its own context and return some result. And this result will be a tool call result, will be the user message that I showed you. Looking at how coding agents work, so we have system message, system prompt, we have user and assistant messages alternating. User messages can be text or it can be tool call result. Assistant messages can be text or it can be tool call. And this is literally it. This is everything you need to know. Now, how does the agent looks at your code base? For example, you run your Claude code in some folder, and how does it have an index of all the files? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have any index at all. It doesn't have any information about your project other than something like current branch, maybe some high-level folder structure, just like top folders, not what is inside folders. And that's it. So it doesn't read all your files all the time. It doesn't have any indexes. The only agent I know has index is Cursor as an IDE, but Codex, Claude Code, OpenCode, other coding agents, they don't index your code base at all. How does agent finds and knows what files to edit? It usually uses bash tool in order to find those files using commands like grep or glob. So it kind of filters out files and it tries to find files which it needs to edit. What it means for us is that it can easily miss some files. It wants to edit some file or it wants to create some function, and it can miss that this function is already implemented in the project, and it can introduce duplicates. It can miss the architecture of your project, again, because it doesn't see all your code base, it doesn't see the architecture. And these all leads us as people who use coding agents to the conclusion that we need to build good context for the agent. So agent doesn't know everything, but we need to write proper markdown files, write proper agents.md, claude.md, add additional memories about our decisions, etc. And this is what I try to share on this channel. This was all I wanted to tell you about coding agents work. If you have any questions, please leave comments. I'll try to answer them all. And thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.